Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women. Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. I am your host, Michelle Malcolm, and as always, it's a pleasure to be in your company today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate your support because I know that you could be anywhere for the next 2 hours, but if you have chosen to be with us here at GPS, thank you. Much appreciated. And so today makes 175 days. Administration has taken office since the PLP won in a resounding fashion the last election. And that amounts to about 6 months. And, in any relationship, after 6 months, they say the honeymoon is over. So we are going to look at the PLP's performance based on what they say they have done as presented by the Prime Minister during the mid-year budget debate yesterday. And I have two great gentlemen who are going to join me in this conversation, will help us to decipher what the PLP is presenting as, or should I say the Davis administration is presenting as what they have done well thus far compared to their predecessors. And we're going to figure out whether or not this first 6 months has been a home run, or whether or not they just made it to first base, or whether they have so far struck out. And it's going to be for an interesting conversation because, quite frankly,
There's no fisherman that calls its own fish stink. So, so we would expect the Prime Minister to
have wonderful things to say about his administration's performance. But what does that look like from the outside looking in? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And joining me on the conversation are Mr. Let me see if I can get him in. There you go. Mr. Andrew Allen and C. Allen Johnson, who are joining us now in this conversation. Gentlemen, welcome to GPS. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle, for having me once again.
Thanks, Michelle.
Wonderful. Now, C. Allen is no stranger to GPS. He's sort of a regular. And Andrew, this is Andrew's first time on the show here at Global. He has appeared on GPS when I was in a previous place, but now this is my first time with him joining me here at Global. So welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you.
The first couple of times I had Andrew on my show, when I had reached out to him and said, I want to talk about taxation, I was a little nervous, to tell you the truth, because I wasn't sure how my audience was going to respond to a show on taxation, because some people might think, boy, that might be a boring show. But let me tell you, that show got so much traction, so much response. People were clearly interested in talking about taxation that it was one of my better shows. And so we are here today not just to talk about taxation, although that is going to be a part of the conversation, because one of the things that the Prime Minister did mention yesterday was a document that he tabled from Deloitte and Touche, and they are looking at the feasibility of implementing a corporate income tax, which is a game changer for us here in the Bahamas. So we got all of that, but I wanted to make this a more broad conversation and not just that one aspect of his communication, but look at the overall presentation of what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday. So, gentlemen, welcome to GPS once again. So, what was of all of the things that he talked about? Well, he spent quite a bit of time throwing rock at the former administration, talking about the things that they met in place and what was going wrong and what they had to fix. And quite frankly, you know, every government does this. They come in and they throw rock at the last one and they say, oh, you know, we met this mess in place and this is what we had to do to fix that. So this is no surprise that we would hear that from this Prime Minister, because that's just standard behavior for them. But he also went on to talk about other things, rolling back of COVID restrictions, talking about, like I said, the corporate income tax, talking about steps that are being taken to improve our economy. What was, I guess, the most important thing that stood out for you, gentlemen, with regard to his presentation to the House of Assembly yesterday? Anyone?
Yeah, for me, it was the actual conversation where he moved to corporate tax as opposed to income tax. And I think that we need to have that conversation on a broader aspect of covering both bases, because in the environment, you can transfer income to person and, you know, back and forth. So, you know, disperse the corporate tax as, you know, as one thing. So there's a lot of gymnastics, because, you know, no one knows exactly how our corporate tax structure will be, what exemptions, what deductions, what avoidance can come out of it, because again, like you said, it's a new thing for us.
Right. Yeah, Andre, I want you to jump in. I know that we don't have all of the information as it relates to what that is going to look like, and I did try to get my hands on the study, but Clint Watson advised that he did not have a copy of it, and so I wasn't able to get it in time for the day. But from what your understanding is, albeit that we are all, you know, limited in knowledge of being proposed, what, generally speaking, does a corporate income tax mean for the Bahamas?
It just means wonders for the Bahamas. It just means wonders. No downsides, all up. And it's just amazing that we've managed since independence to be lulled into a plantation way of thinking, where those who benefit the least from our tax system, which taxes consumers, poor people, average people, and gives blanket, just absolute blanket exemption to the wealthiest corporations and individuals. We can get back to income tax, because we need that too. Personal income tax. I should be paying it. Many people should be paying it. But corporate income tax, the absence of corporate income tax in the Bahamas since independence is, in my opinion, the only sense in which the Bahamas can be described as a developing rather than a developed country. If we had a model of taxation that was consistent with world norms, with Barbados, with Jamaica, the United States, Trinidad, and given our level of wealth as a country, which is, we're not an averagely wealthy country, we're a very wealthy country. Given the levels of wealth in our country, the per capita spending on our people, which lags, we're told by traditional media that we spend too much, which is just laughable. The per capita spending on our people would mean that, for instance, a country like Barbados, half as wealthy as us, little less than half as wealthy as the Bahamas, spends more per capita on its citizens. We are both equal in being the two highest human development Black countries in history, Barbados and the Bahamas. Few Bahamians know these things because for some reason we don't talk about these things, but we would be double where Barbados is in terms of infant mortality, in terms of access to education. They have free tertiary education, have had it since the 1970s, free university education. we would be double where they are, where we're consistent. We went up, we increased during the pandemic more than any other country in the Caribbean region, our spending on social services, the needs of our people. That brought us up to about 11%, sorry, 9%, was the average is 18, Jamaica, Barbados. And to pretend as if there's a downside, as if somehow the economy is going to suffer from having this fat of wealth sitting in certain people's pockets doing nothing. The economy is going to somehow suffer by having huge corporations, Commonwealth Bank, Colina, Arawak Homes, of all different political persuasions, all different colors. It's not a race or anti-rich people thing. Huge corporations paying their due. All of the money that they make off of the Bahamian citizens. All of it. They don't make their money off of foreign investors. Do you think that Colina makes its money off of foreign investors? Look at the top 10 richest countries in the Bahamas. The BISX. Do you think they make their money off of foreigners? They make their money off of Bahamians. Bahamians are the source of wealth in the Bahamas. Bahamians, the income of Bahamians in the frontline industries, which are not taxed because frontline industries in the Bahamas are by definition outside the domestic economy. All of that, all of the income that's translated into the domestic economy comes through the average Bahamian. Yet the average Bahamian is taxed on his spending. Yet the companies that are reporting income of tens of millions of dollars annually, Doctors Hospital, you name them, are not paying 1 penny in corporate income tax. It's unheard of in other countries. And yet, I hear Bahamians addicted to American television talking about, Donald Trump with his tax loop. He wouldn't need a tax loop in the Bahamas because we don't even pretend to tax wealthy corporations. So it is the most important conversation. I hear a lot of other conversations out there, but there's no more important conversation in the Bahamas, and there hasn't been since independence. The 1967 process was left tragically half done by the fact that we still have a fiscal system which transfers money from poor people to rich people. And most Bahamians don't seem to realize it. And you have professionals, and when you see a man in a suit, you have to ask who they're working for. Professionals who are working for these big corporations coming on TV, Jane Smith recently, talking about, why should the Bahamas be bullied into having corporate income tax? Bullied? Why would somebody need to bully us to do what's good for us? Now here's a man who's working. He's the chairman of Colina, right? He's the chairman of.
When you say good for us, good for who?
For the population and the big country.
No, for the majority.
Listen, I am in complete agreement with what you're saying. There you go. I'm in complete agreement with what you're saying, because here's the reality. One of the first things you said was the Bahamas is a very rich country, but the average person on the street would look at you with a side eye and suck their teeth and say, well, you got to be crazy, because they ain't feeling the wealth.
Right.
So I am in complete agreement with you.
They're being told it's not a wealthy country. You hear politicians saying things like, the stupidest things about the economy. I remember my father was an economist, but he went into politics, and I remember him just rolling his eyes and shaking his head when he heard fellow politicians on television saying, well, the Bahamas isn't really rich like it looks. If some foreigners moved out, those foreigners aren't part of our GDP. They're not calculated into our GDP. GDP means gross domestic product. If you took Life Key and bulldozed it into the ocean overnight, if anything, the GDP per capita would probably go up in the short term. Those people's income doesn't come from the Bahamas. They're not producing wealth inside the Bahamas. The wealth produced inside the Bahamas, Atlantis, Bahamar, and the only way it comes into the domestic economy is through salaries, through average Bahamians. Those salaries, though, then go on and create the wealthy country that we have today. But that wealth is unfairly managed by taking more of it in taxes from the employee and the consumer than from the person who's making the money, the profiteer from it. So You ask who benefits. The irony, Michelle, is that everybody benefits. Because, I remember my grandmother used to tell me a story. She came back to the Bahamas just after the PLP came to power in about 1970. And she met one of the big, what we call Bay Street boys, one of the big merchants on Bay Street that she had seen since she was a teenager coming from Long Island on her grandfather's mailboat. And she just teasingly said to him, and he was in his store, "So how do you like the new government?" Well, he pulled her in a side room, because he remembered her, pulled her in a side room, said, "Let me tell you something." Said, "I never had it so good." Said, now that money is in the hands of the average person, now that wages have gone up, now that, the results of the 1958 strike, the results of 1942, all these things created more money in the hands of the average Bahamian. And that man used to have one shop on Bay Street. By the 1970s, he had one on Harold Road, one on Harbor Island, one outside Lyford Key, one in Palmdale. So everybody benefits in the Bahamas when the consumer and the poor man is given a better shake in terms of fiscal, in terms of income, in terms of minimum wage. Everybody benefits. That's my 5 cents. I hope I haven't dragged on too long about it.
So why is it that the merchant class and the wealthy are trying so hard, fighting so hard against this? Because quite frankly, just because this was this was tabled, I'm not too confident that it's going to go very far. And I do remember, and I could be wrong, and I hope I am, but I do remember Peter Turnquest getting up in the House of Assembly. Remember when that one letter came from Lyford Key, and then all of a sudden talk changed, right? And Peter Turnquest got up in the House of Assembly and said, "It's not as easy to tax rich people as you think."
Easy as taking.
I'm thinking, okay.
It's insane.
Need to,
that was
because you ain't got no problem taxing the poor.
See,
no, but here's the thing. Go ahead.
What is happening is that we actually taxing the producers of the country now, because we are a labor country, and so we provide labor to banking, we provide labor to the hospitality industry. And when you look at for businesses, no business reaches the consumption tax. No business pays the consumption tax. We talk about that. It's a pass-through tax to the final consumer. And so if I'm making $250,000 and you're making $20,000, even if I eat $20,000 and you spend your $20,000, you are disproportionately taxed compared to the wealth that I have built. And so for the mere fact that this so-called GDP that we talk about essentially is dispersed, but only taxed at the consumer level, creates a disparity in what's going on. I believe if we have a proper income tax and we could focus on the corporate tax, we could create an environment and a competitive environment that actually gives us an advantage to many jurisdictions around the world, as well as the other services and things that can come attached, that we can actually attract people via tax exchange agreements to actually voluntarily enter our jurisdiction to begin paying this income tax.
Yeah, to pay tax here rather than there. Because here's the thing. Foreigners who are here, and Peter Turnquest talks about it's hard to tax rich people. He was talking about Lyford Key foreigners who aren't going to pay tax anyway here because they're not in the domestic economy, right? Unfortunately, that also means wealthy Bahamians pay less than poorer Bahamians. But of that group he's talking about, like Mr. Johnson just said, you could have, if you had, like Barbados has, a competitive tax jurisdiction where you did have taxes on activities generated by foreigners. People go from Canada, set up their businesses in a real sense in Barbados in order to pay lesser taxes, but they still pay income tax. We have no such thing. We just have, everything is on the Bahamian poor and middle class. We invite the world to come and do what you want, and we will subsidize you on the Bahamian poor and middle class. The roads, the police, all the things a society needs in order for businesses to exist and function are paid for by the man on the street. Everything, the infrastructure.
But Michelle, I want you to imagine this, right? And we often look at these individuals and say they are self-made. And a point that Alan just made. How are you self-made? Did you pay for the roads? Did you pay for the airport? Did you pay for the police salary by yourself? Did you pay for the infrastructure? Did you pay for all of these things? No, you're not self-made. You're made on the back of the human people.
Socialism for the rich.
Exactly.
We have socialism for rich corporations in this country. You have a situation where you're subsidizing a lack of basic corporate tax, which every other jurisdiction has, by putting up more and more tax. People. And I'm disappointed, of course, at the lack of speed with which the present government has acted, right? I had wished that they had gone further, but I don't think that they have a choice other than to do what is now being mooted. And I think there's a reason it's being mooted, corporate income tax, because we can't in the Bahamas go to the world and start begging and saying, please give us these concessions, because the rest of the world would look at us and say, well, we can't afford not to have corporate income tax, yet we're supposed to pay for you.
Exactly.
To exempt your rich.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. Because here it is. Most of our people are not feeling the benefits of the wealth of the wealth is not common in the Bahamas. And so, but we are in a position where you're right. We can't go to some of these international bodies and say, well, we need help, because they look at our structure and say, well, it doesn't appear so, because you seem to be unwilling to make the decisions that you need to make to put yourself in a better position financially. So yes. Why are you so confident, Andrew, that something is going to change this go round? Why do you believe that this time we are going to see this actually implemented?
I think because they won't have a choice. I think the political class in the Bahamas generally doesn't understand the economy of the Bahamas. That's generally the case. Generally, the kinds of people who are interested in politics have zero understanding of the economic history of the Bahamas and the way its economy works. They seem to think that the economy works by rich people coming in here, hanging out, and somehow the wealth just falls off of them onto us, rather than that all of the wealth in the Bahamas is extracted through the Bahamian laborer who is at the front line of these investments, right? So I don't expect them to gain some sort of sudden understanding of that, but I expect the choices to run out. We can't borrow. It's harder and harder to borrow because of the effects of the pandemic, the effects of Dorian, and the state that we're in, the state the world is in. We've run out of options. The government now knows something no government knew 5 years ago, that you cannot go back to the Bahamian consumer and put up his taxes anymore, right? They've learned that. And I don't think, so what are the options? The only option is to seek avenues of taxation that will not cause an absolute collapse in the government popularity, or that exclude foreign sources because they're not available anymore. That's why I think they will have to. Unfortunately, they're being forced. I would have done it by choice in 1967 and 73, but we're being forced into, once again, we're being forced into doing what's good for us. Remember, this is a country that had to be forced into, everything good for us. We had to, obviously, when the British Empire abolished slavery, we didn't only have white Bahamians, but people don't know this. We had black Bahamians who were against the amelioration acts that were being forced on the Bahamas. So we're always being forced into doing what's good for us, unfortunately.
Michelle, do you know during the WTO debate, one of the reasons they said they wanted to join WTO is so that we can be forced to do what is necessary. That was their main, coming from the representative from Ashavago line and Brent Simmons. It says it'll force us to do what is good for us. And I was flawed on that statement. And I'm simply saying we just can't just do what's good for us. And so, Yes, what also happened, we are in a financial situation now that we have to show real revenue to be able to pay back some of these loans we're going knocking for. Let's not forget, we have a $1.7 billion that's due this June. We have the $250 million that is due from the IMF that we borrowed against our shares in there. For us to be able to like you say, you go to the bank, what is the first thing the bank asks? Where's your income coming from? And you cannot show it now in the people. You must actually show it in the economy. And the only place left for them now is to go to the income tax aspect of it. So again, we are being economically forced to move in that direction.
Wealthy corporations have to be the first. It has to be corporations pay something to. It's. I just declined some calls here. It's otherwise unheard of for, you know, as I say, these for corporations whose earnings are made, and some of which have been so surprisingly pandemic proof. It's just amazing. You've had companies, if you follow the BISX, some of them did very well out of it, you know. And government continues to put to I guess it sees itself as an agency for keeping the rich in some keeping the rich.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we could dance all around it as much as we want, but we know that there's an elephant in the room when it comes to this conversation. And there's a reason why it has taken this long for this to come to this point. And that's because successive administrations have relied very heavily on the very people now that are going to be most impacted by this if it does become law. And, you know, whoever, how does the saying go? Whoever holds the string of the purse, how does that saying go? In other words, if you have to come to me,
the golden rule is that he that has the goal makes the rule.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. That's another way to put it. So reality, I mean, is that it's a reason why this has taken this long to come to this. That's no accident. It's no oversight.
Yeah, there's several reasons, and that's a big one. I don't think it's the only one. Again, I think many of the political class don't understand the issues. And I think it's easy for them to I mean, that is a big reason. There's no doubt about it. But it can't be the only, because the Bahamas, for some reason, stands out in the entire region for having taken this particular self-harmful route. Another part of the
what
reason.
do you believe? Go ahead.
Another part of the reason is, as I say, the Bahamas is a very wealthy country. So wealthy that even though we're kicking ourselves, it took this long for it to start to hurt, right? Literally, we could, in a sense, get away with taxing our consumers, having an unfairly low minimum wage, and all these other things, because we look at the rest of the region, and politicians will say, oh, well, you're still better off than this, you're better off than that, you still have people coming here looking for jobs. So psychologically, it has allowed the population to fool itself into thinking that we're doing the right things, or we should just not do anything that's quote unquote radical, right? So, but I think you're right. One of the big elephants in the room, I don't think it's the only one. I think, you know, but one of them is the failure of all governments to control the power of money in politics. I blame the first government, because that was the government that had the chance for 25 years to do so, and that really didn't benefit from that, because, you know, the PLP in the first 25 years, it wasn't benefiting from the merchant class's money as much as the opposition was. So there's a reason. There's several reasons why we in the Bahamas stand out for being so bad at punishing our consumers with our tax system.
But Michelle, just let me say that when you talk about income, Michelle, let me say, when you talk about income tax and you talk about the new global economic dispensation we're in, the Bahamas being the most digitally prepared, the reason why companies will not come here now is because it will be punitive for them, and even an image that they are trying to embrace a tax avoidance system. If we have an income tax in a country that's digitally prepared, these mega companies will run to situate themselves in real situations of being docile in the Bahamas, because they're not just here from a corporate headquarters. They're actually here from a productivity level. And we're talking about the giants in data and technology and everything else. And so I'm simply saying is that an income tax-based system could probably see our GDP double in about a decade.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think it's a very, very self-harming thing to keep telling everybody, oh no, the first thing every government says when it comes to power, we rule out income tax. That's the first thing they say, you know?
Well, there's a reason for that. And you touched on it, popularity, because they know that particularly those who are already not making very much money are going to flinch when they hear about an income tax. And maybe we need to break down why that may not be the best approach. But we have to take this commercial break. So we're going to take this break. And then when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with C. Alan Johnson and Andrew Allen. We're talking about the mid-year budget communication by Prime Minister Philip Davis. It was tabled yesterday. And specifically, we have been focusing on the whole question of corporate income tax. What is that going to look like for the Bahamas, and who vex just by the mention of that? We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Stay with us.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rim fix and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires, cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm in your company. And today I am talking to C. Alan Johnson and Andrew C. Allen. We're talking about the mid-year budget debate contribution by Prime Minister Philip Davis in the House of Assembly yesterday. But we've been specifically concentrating thus far on the document that was tabled from Deloitte and Touche is looking at the feasibility of introducing a corporate income tax to the Bahamas. And what does that mean and look like for us? If you'd like to join in on the conversation, our telephone lines are 326-0271, 326-0271. 326-0271 or 326-0272. 326-0272, and our WhatsApp number, if you'd like to send us a message, not call, send a message, 824-9952, 824-9952. So we had to take a break. Justice C. Allen, I believe you wanted to go into details about, you had started to make a point prior to us going into the break. I hope you remember what that point was. Do you?
I don't, but you did ask a question though concerning income tax and the involvement. Let's use the United States as an example, and here's where they make people believe that you'll be paying income tax. A progressive tax system, like in the United States, generally if you make below $28,000, you do not pay income tax. In fact, you actually get a refund. Child income credit and other credits if you look at it as it stands. And so when you start talking about a tax system in the Bahamas, unless we say we're going to go a flat tax from $1 to whatever amount you earn, if you have a progressive tax system, you can carve out a comfortable position and say if you're earning less than $20,000 per year, you essentially would not be subject to the tax laws, to the income tax laws from a personal income tax basis. And so it isn't, it's a conversation that we should have. And so what you have is you have people who have adopted the position of how they've been told, indoctrinated over the years that it's going to be bad for you. And let's say a person is paying this amount or that amount, you're going to end up paying taxes on money that, you, in addition to the taxes you're already paying. And that's not exactly how it works. In fact, if you look at the revenue growth in the country, you may be able to adjust some of the taxes on us. Like, for instance, like say we're talking about the 10% VAT. If you look at the growth,
stick a pin in that. Hold on, C. Allen. Stick a pin in that because we have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Hi, Michelle Malcolm.
Hi.
Great to hear you. Gregory Moss here.
Hi, Mr. Moss.
I just wanted to contribute a little bit to this idea of a corporate income tax, and to point out that passing a corporate income tax regime without also having personal income tax just shifts the type of ownership base. It doesn't collect any money. It doesn't lead to any increased revenue because persons will just then be able to conduct their business affairs through any structure other than a corporation. Other than incorporating a company, you can still conduct it as a single individual, as a partnership, as an unincorporated corporation, as a limited liability partnership, in so many different ways. Actually, corporate income tax is a counterpart to personal income tax so as to avoid persons avoiding taxation by going into corporate structure. So bringing that in first instead of personal income tax in first defeats the whole purpose of income tax.
Okay, stay on the line because Mr. Allen wants to respond to that.
I agree, Mr. Moss. I will go so far as to say, the first thing people think is, well, let us instead just pay our directors. Instead of collecting this money as corporate profit, we'll have our directors, our owners of the company, appointed directors, pay them each $1 million income tax. Private income. Do you see? So without the one without the other makes
sense. If I could finish this, if you want to just say you're taxing profits, you can switch it from the corporation to the individual by divvying it out, either salary or dividends and so on. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the profit itself, the entire structure, is undermined if you do not bring in place personal income tax at the same time. Because if they say, oh, we're bringing in corporate tax, but we're going to define corporate tax as any money made by the corporation, however it ends up on the books.
Right.
that still doesn't solve the problem, because you can just be unincorporated. You can do a trust. You can do personal, as many people do today, just a business that's conducted by a personal individual. No, the whole idea of corporate income tax is to plug the hole on personal income tax. Persons go into corporate structures to say they don't have any personal tax. What you're really proposing, or what they're proposing, is to bring in the plug to plug a hole which doesn't exist, because you no longer, you just have personal income tax.
Interesting.
I agree.
It doesn't work.
So,
I agree. And
interesting. In other words, introducing an income tax would sort of get rid of that loophole that could exist if you introduce the corporate without the income. Is that what you're saying?
You have to introduce income tax first. And then this idea of scaring the entire public with income tax is the point that Mr. C. Allen Johnson was making.
Right.
That you just exempt most of the people from it. You exempt people under $50,000 in the Bahamas from personal or corporate income tax. And all of a sudden, you're really going after where the real money is, and you're dealing with corruption. Anyway, I don't want to take over.
So let me ask this question before you go, and any of you three can answer this. Help us to understand this, because if I'm a very wealthy person, and are you saying that with both the income and the tax on the books, there's no way that I can get away? Because I easily say, well, I am not making this income. This income is being made by this trust. So how is it still solving the problem if I can prove that this is not my personal income, but yet the income isn't coming from a corporation?
It has to be a tax on profits. The tax is on profits, right? It doesn't matter what the structure is. I think is the point that Mr. Moss is making is correct. I'd like to point out something that Mr. Moss said in a few parliaments ago in Parliament that I think sums up the Bahamas' position, Malady, better than I've ever positioned. He said that the Bahamas only has a debt problem.
Call. Hang on.
Are you there?
Go ahead.
He said the Bahamas' debt problem only has a debt problem. I'm paraphrasing. So the debt that we have is essentially the size of the tax break that we have given to the wealthy over the years. That's the fact. The Bahamas' combined debt since independence is essentially the result of and commensurate to the size of the exemption on taxation of wealth that we've given. So I commend Mr. Moss for having that insight. But of course,
in fact, Michelle, that video is, if you search for Gregory Moss on YouTube and on Facebook, that video, his contribution to that aspect, he lays out a convincing argument for almost 10 years now of why we should have went to income tax. And if you had, believe it or not, if we had followed that advice at the time that debate was going on, we would be where we need to be fiscally. And the national debt that has grown tremendously, or the fact that we're trying to refinance it right now, would not be an issue. So just go for, I think that was doing the debate for VAT. And if you go and look at that, from the time we've had VAT, and look at the billions of dollars we said we raised from VAT on the backs of poor people. And I think Mr. Moss made a convincing argument as to why we should have went to income tax. And so when you look at the tremendous amount of wealth that passes through this country, where our individuals would voluntarily consider us a jurisdiction they want to submit themselves to, we are the highest number of tax exchange agreements in the world, if I'm not mistaken. I think we're well over 30. And so one of the issues I think of also tax avoidance is that many of our individuals, behemoths, who may have their wealth in other countries, may be subject now to reporting those wealth in other countries to our tax authority. And so there's a lot of self-interest that happens in this decision not to go to income tax. And I agree with Mr. Moss that we essentially are buying a bucket for a leak that has not begun yet. And so the leak happens, like you said, we're giving them a tax avoidance an example, whereas creative accounting allows us to move around. And I support this position that we should have a straight out income tax and exempt the threshold that we want individuals to be exempt from. Set a threshold.
Okay, we have a call. Just stick a thought, Andrew, and remember what it is. I'm going to come back to you on it. We have a call on the line, though. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, good afternoon, Miss Michelle Malcolm. This is Berenice Johnson.
Now, Berenice, don't run on with a bunch of stuff today if it ain't related to this topic, Berenice, because I can cut you. But go ahead.
Listen, Miss Michelle Malcolm. Let me give thanks to the Almighty God through Jesus Christ of Nazareth, enveloping us in the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
This is more than related to this. This is exactly what is necessary, because these two academia in the station, they always, I listen to their critics, and Mr. Andrew Allen, son of the late Sir William Allen. Thank God for my mortal boss, former Prime Minister Hubert Alexander Ingram, privatizing Batelco, because with the modernity of these communication devices now, we can track our monies. Our people are not in position for any form of taxes, including the corporate, because number one, we must know our history, how to access the monies. Billions, trillions are owed to this nation, and we must go back in history together. We must come together as one Bahamas development plan. We cannot place any form of taxes on corporate businesses, because number one, they employ our people, and they do not have the proper development and the necessities of electrification. That's number one. The electricity is poor, okay? And until we come together, and I always said to an all, the late 48th President Ronald Wilson Reagan, we have the history, we have the solution. Our people need to be in homes. The tea of humanity must come first. And I must commend the present Prime Minister in dealing with managing these monies, because the mismanagement of the monies of our taxpayers' monies are right within the techniques. Okay? And we must address that right away, and we must do it together and cut this nonsense about PLP, DNA, all of those other fringe parties. With the buoyancy of finances, we place there in the social services and all other areas of what the late Mr. Lincoln Bain, who was saying he was going to give out $100,000. We have individuals who have access to some of that money. Okay, we are aware of that in the police force.
All right,
thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you. You did well. Let's let our guests respond. Thanks for calling.
Well, she has conflated and convoluted a whole bunch of various concepts. So I'll just say to her, if you claim we got enough money now and we're doing so badly, just imagine how much better we'll do once we start income tax.
I didn't quite understand. I didn't quite understand her point on why we don't need income tax, and why it's going to harm businesses when it harms. Businesses are making their money from individuals. That's where they make their money. Businesses are making their money out of me and you, out of our pockets, right? So to harm our pockets, how that can make life easier for business at the end of the day, I don't understand, firstly. Secondly, I don't know, I didn't understand the reference to the privatization of Batelco, BTC. But I find
I'm saying that this is where she conflate and convolute things. Now, I would say very simply, if I'm making, let's put the threshold at 30,000. If I have more money, because the economy will grow exponentially based on how well we structure this income tax, that means I have more money. That means those businesses will make more money because I have more disposable income. And so
I have more money to spend.
It's an absolute balancing act.
But I mean, as I say again, I didn't understand that reference. But I would just like the lady to consider the actual what took place during the quote unquote privatization of Telco. Mr. Ingram sold a company for essentially $148 million because the Bahamian taxpayer ended up with the cost of the pensions, right? With the Bahamian taxpayer ended up with the liabilities. So it came to $148 million that the Bahamas has netted from the sale of Patelco, BTC. A few years later, 3 years later, the company that bought BTC, it valued it at $1.3 billion when it sold itself for $7 billion. BTC today, and in the interim, all that took place was they fired 1,000 Bahamians. The company has not done anything since then to advance the infrastructure of the Bahamas. Has done very little.
Actually, I would put you that their action has regressed the technological advancement of the Bahamas.
In the meantime, Mr. Ingram permitted a foreign government to splice into our submarine cables, submarine pipe. I know this personally, right? And I think there were 2 countries, the WikiLeaks in the WikiLeaks exposed, 2 countries in the world that 100% of the telephony is recorded by the United States security agencies, and the Bahamas is one of them as a result of that. So, in my opinion, whatever the lady thinks my father's, I shudder when I hear my father's name mentioned in the same breath with Hubert Ingram, but whatever she thinks about it, in a country that took itself seriously, Mr. Ingram would have been put on trial. So that's my contribution to the whole idea of the privatization of BTC. And Mr. Christie and Mr. Davis, if I ever got a chance to do so, as either of them, would have taken it back with not much compensation at all. I mean, really taken it back. And this whole idea about, oh, we've got to be scared about foreign investors not coming to the Bahamas. Okay, let's see. But what Mr. Ingram did to Patelco was one of the things Mr. Ingram did to the Bahamas that set the Bahamas back so dramatically. And I think he set. What's that?
2 decades.
Mr. Ingram did more to the Bahamas than even Mr. Mths, because Mr. Mths was just hopeless, couldn't do anything. But between that and repealing the minimum.
Did you just say that Hubert Ingram did more damage to the Bahamas than Hubert Mths? Is that what you just said? Because you were cracking up there a bit. You were breaking up there a bit. I just want to make sure I heard you right. Is that what you said?
Vastly more. Mr. Mths didn't hardly do anything because he was hopeless, thank goodness. But I mean, if he could have, I suppose he would have done it. He would have sold Grand Bahama to Oban, but he was hopeless. Mr. Ingram did more damage to the foundations built by his predecessor government than any other government. No other country in this region has that kind of, maybe Jamaica with Siaga, has that kind of, just blowback in terms of its development. Moved right back, shrunk the middle class, crime. Mr. Ingram's government is the reason why we have the situation, the violent, the levels of murder that we have in the Bahamas today, both over the decisions it took over bail and by repealing the minimum sentences for the possession of illegal guns. There are no minimum sentences. People routinely get 13 months, 9 months, having a max 9 months in the Bahamas. So to hear my father's name mentioned, Hubert Ingram, I take personal offense to. That's my own.
Michelle, let me say that
we have a caller on the line. Hold on, Cialan. We have a caller on the line. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, Michelle, let me call back and speak slow. Let me apologize to Mr. Allen. I did not mean it in a way because his father was the first Minister of Finance. That is why I referenced that. And with the the privatization of Patelco, it was supposed to have happened from 1983. I took the corresponding print out of the newspaper down to the Progressive Liberal Party. Okay? Now, your father, he did the 1995 package. And what we are embracing and we are bearing now is the Memorandum of Understanding from 1998 with the Turks and Caicos Island. Our people are paying taxes, Turks and Caicos, and that must be dealt and scrutinized. Okay? Mr. Ingram shall surpass the works of the late Sir Lyndon Pinling because Sir Lyndon Pinling instructed him. He was the protege. Okay? And we in the police force back in the 80s That is how come I can still speak to it, so that our people will have the dignity of humanity with financial power of pay. We ought not be given foods and items if we be found in a bad place. We have the access to monies when we come together as one Bahamas to develop this nation properly. Okay. All of our islands ought to have been developed properly. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Allen?
Thank you for calling.
No, I do. No, I do. Bernice, if you want to debate with me technology going back from its incarnation from the 70s, I will have that debate with you. But first of all, let me just tell you, BTC, but telco, as it was, cannot and should not have been sold without a referendum. Secondly, the BTC debate never made it to the upper house or to the governor general. And BTC was established as a protocol for which BT was established in our pre-independence. And I maintain personally, and I can make this argument with anyone today, that BTC, no, but telco, even though you changed the name, they're doing the same thing with BPL, because Bahamas Power and Light cannot be sold without a referendum. So what we do is we change the name and say we didn't sell Bahamas Power and Light, we sold BPL. We didn't sell Telco, we sold BTC. But essentially, those are assets that cannot be sold without a referendum. And I would love to have a legal debate with anyone in regards to whether or not BTC itself has yet to be sold, even though those assets may have been taken out of the country. And I'm simply saying is that, I know what people has been indoctrinated with technology and what they say. But let me say to you that the sale of BTC has set the Bahamas back at least 2 decades in its preparedness, but it still has the Bahamas as the potentially being still of the #1 prime players. Why? Because in spite of the former PLP administration failure to reclaim BTC, the illegal sale of BTC or Telco, we now in a new dispensation that will allow us now to build into the future, which is the new digital infrastructure that the world has began an accelerated movement to, and for which the Bahamas sits as the gatekeeper to that new environment. But the problem again is when people like Bernice and these so-called technical experts that just found out about Google about 5 to 6 years ago begin to declare themselves pseudo-experts, arrogance of ignorance leading to paralysis of analysis. That's the problem with our national development. In the same way they talk about technology as how we talk about income tax. No, I'm just saying this. And
we have a call on the line, though.
Okay.
We have a call on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Hey, good day, Lady Malcolm. How are you doing?
Excellent. How are you?
Wonderful. I said, I know I get a little mad at Miss Johnson, man. You understand? Because she did, the same thing over and over again. I ain't sure she knows she's the same. I used to be a technician at Patel. I was there for 30 years. And I was a power technician. And most of the experts that they brought into Patelco, some of the equipment, they bring them into work on, they ain't never see them in their life. So they relied heavily on the local guys to help them make them big money while we was only making our salary. The main reason, sometimes, Ms. Malcolm, we got to call it what it is. Because we've been 60 years now, going down the drain, and everybody don't want to say what it is. The reason why Patelco was sold, they didn't have to sell Patelco, because Hubert Alexander Ingram was having shares in Alive. He's one of the biggest shareholders in Alive.
I like how Berenice and all of y'all changing the topic of my show, because we
Michelle, just pause that. Michelle, can you pause that?
About the video budget debate, but y'all just changed the show.
No,
ahead,
Michelle.
Go ahead. No, that's fine.
Alive Keith.
No, I'm not blaming you.
See
what the real reason is. Alexander Ingram is one of the biggest shareholders in Alive.
But let me can the caller pause? Let me say this. We are having a conversation about appliances. I'm having a conversation about the store. The store, the highway was sold, not the buses and the cars. That's what Alive is. That's what these people are. They are appliances. Understand this, man. We do not have technology companies in the Bahamas. We have ICT companies. Nothing they have, they own. BTC and Alive is nothing more than a giant Wi-Fi company, right? The same Wi-Fi you have in your house, they have a wide area network. Okay, you have a local area network, and they're selling a wide area network that you can access to your devices. We are talking about the digital infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah, we could cut this short It means nothing. Nobody can come in this Bahamas and do that Bahamians can't do just as good or better. Okay, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you so much for calling.
And guess what?
Gentlemen, we have...
I'm saying, but Michelle, what I'm saying is this. I agree with him in that respect because Behemoths were there with the first laptop design and the first computer was released. But I'm simply saying is that we have to recognize our potential for shaping our own destiny, but we must base it on factual information rather than what I was told, what I believe, what I think, and what I feel. We need to start having debates on what we know.
Gotcha. All right, let's take this break. We have to pay some bills, so let's go ahead and play these commercials from our sponsors. And then on the other side, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to get back on track. We're going to continue the conversation about the mid-year budget debate. Specifically, we've been paying a lot of attention to this whole idea of corporate income tax. How does that relate without personal income tax? Is Mr. Moss correct in that you cannot have one without the other? We're going to talk about that and more on the other side of the break. Stay with us. This is GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your Understanding your microbiome, also known as Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem. Your body. Understanding your microbiome. Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Understanding your microbiome. Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for rims, paints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Blessed love.
It's gotten harder and harder to get your daily requirement of vital nutrients from food alone. Without additional vitamin and nutrient support, your health and well-being can suffer drastically. That's why Z-Radical was specifically formulated. It combines a blend of antioxidant-rich vitamins, minerals, and botanicals with the protective powers of fucoidan to help fill the gaps from lack of nutrients in your foods. The core of Z-Radical is fucoidan, a naturally occurring polysaccharide that helps stimulate immune reaction, protecting you against inflammation and oxidative stress. We harvest this powerful mineral-rich nutrient from brown seaweed, harvested only from the world's most pristine ocean waters to ensure the purest quality. It's then extracted using cold process technology to ensure maximum levels of bioavailability. Then we add essential vitamins that help to protect your cardiovascular and nervous systems and are crucial for optimal immune and neurological function. Z-Radical also includes a proprietary blend of delicious antioxidant-rich fruits and berries. This great-tasting combination helps your body combat free radical imbalances that can contribute to a variety of degenerative conditions like arthritis and heart disease. Z-Radical. Experience the power of fucoidan with antioxidant-rich berries, 8 essential vitamins, and more to provide you with potent health benefits. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
And we're back. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm in your company. Listen, y'all. If you are like me and sometimes you end up getting a late lunch, I want to highly recommend that you go and check out the Tiki Bikini Hut on Junkanoo Beach. Amazing food. It is so good. Amazing tropical drinks, great family-friendly atmosphere right on the beach, right across the street from the police station too. So you're in a safe environment. But let me tell you, Byron and his team there will make you feel very much at home, very much welcome. Whether you are a visitor from all over the world or homegrown, go check out the Tiki Bikini Hut for a great experience. Okay, so we are talking today about the mid-year budget debate. My guests are Andrew C. Allen and C. Allen Johnson. And we would love to hear from you. The telephone numbers to call if you want to be a part of the show, 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0271, or 326-0272. 326-0272, or you can send us a message via WhatsApp at 824-9952, 824-9952. So during his presentation to the House of Assembly yesterday, Prime Minister Philip Davis said that the supplementary budget was carefully designed on specific priorities. 1, to reallocate government resources to priority areas. 2, to prioritize providing immediate relief to the Bahamian people. And 3, to lay the foundation for a robust recovery of the Bahamian economy. And the one aspect of, well, I shouldn't say just one, but one of the major aspects of his presentation that caught my attention was this whole idea of introducing corporate income tax to the Bahamas. So based on what, gentlemen, he wanted the mid-year budget debate to primarily accomplish, do you think that based on what was presented yesterday, that was mission accomplished, or are we still falling short from your estimation?
We'll see.
C. Allen, you're muted. You're muted, C. Allen. You're muted. You're talking, but you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, there
I'm saying this. What it is, this was a invitation to an engagement party. We didn't even get engaged. Again, let's go back to what Mr. Moss said. Income tax and a growth strategy for the economy. We need a recovery strategy, not from the recovery to as comparative to 2020 standards. We need to be, because remember, even in 2019, we were not at the level of growth that is needed to carry the Bahamas. And so a combination of an aggressive 21st century growth strategy based on the Progressive Liberal Party blueprint for change and their economic plan, as well as their speech from the throne, along with income tax, with a proper empowerment regime and economic, so a good social safety net to stand as a bridge. And so, yes, these so-called, if you come to this party, which I guess would be in a matter of weeks, it's a matter of weeks before we move into the real budget debate for 2022, 2023. It would be nice to see the legislative agenda that shows that income tax regime that will be in place, whether it be in the immediate or as we transition into it, because we'll have to put the infrastructure in place. And I tell you, in this age of technology, very little infrastructure is needed if properly executed, as well as the so-called blueprint for change, an actual blueprint, not promises for change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the government made some of the right noises and has been doing so sometime with the blueprint for change. And, you know, I think that if you read the newspapers, what people tend to fixate upon is the sort of political disputes and the blame games, etc. But if you read between the lines, I guess what each administration tries to do is distinguish itself from its predecessor. Insofar as talk of things like corporate income taxes, attempts to do that, hopefully we'll be moving in the right direction. We have yet to see, but right noises.
But let me say, Michelle, as we move into the discussion for income tax, we need people like Gregory Morris and others to actually enter into this debate, because they were making contribution. They made some valid points. Almost, if you look at it now from the 5 years that he was elected in 2012 to where we are today, he was. Some people would say his argument would stand from then, even now, even refined. And so the world has changed also, that makes it even more applicable in today's environment. And so I think that we need to have open, honest discussion, not for those individuals and not leave it up to those individuals in parliament. I call them the 5-year celebrities, because essentially, you never heard this type of discussion from them before. You never heard this type of discussion. And so now I don't know how we would think that 6 months later, we would expect them to basically transition into this knowledge vacuum to actually begin to have the true conversation of where we need to go. We need to stop depending on the 39 individuals to make the absolute determination of the direction we need to go, and for people to become educated as to what's what, and for those of you who think you know, just to remain silent and actually begin to know.
I want to read a quote from his presentation yesterday. He said that as a consequence of improvements in global market conditions, the rate of economic growth in the Bahamas was forecast by the IMF in October 2021 to increase by 2% and 8% in 2021 and 2022, respectively. While the IMF has not yet revised this forecast to account for its latest global outlook, we remain confident that the upward momentum that we have witnessed to date will largely be sustained. That said, as I stated earlier, we will need to maintain a cautious and prudent policy stance and adjust policies as necessary to sustain both economic momentum and the health of public finances. Are you gentlemen satisfied that from what you have seen in this first 6 months, we are moving in the right direction as to that goal?
I can't see. It's hard to make it. Essentially, we're describing a destination, and nobody's telling us the vehicle by how we get there. It's beautiful, a beautiful description of things. It almost sounds like heaven, a description, but no one is telling us the exact blueprint on how do we achieve these benchmarks that is necessary. And let me explain to you like some of the things that we have to address in that. We have to address our education system. First of all, we have an education system that was already archaic at best, that has been devastated by COVID, that set us back again, because if you look at the fact that we could very easily be at least a decade behind because of the 2 years that we have lost and having no real effective plan of recovery. And so the education system is very important for transitioning the Bahamian people and preparing them for and transitioning those who are already in the workforce to it. And so even though you begin to say these things with growth, the growth of the system that the IMF use and Moody's and others use, that was in existence before COVID, no longer exists in the current format they do exist. And so if we have this fantasy that we're going to go back to this pre-pandemic type environment of how jobs were handled, how people went to work, how information is done, it's a fantasy. And so I would like to see a real world type description of the economic models that we're going to use to rebuild this economy, as opposed to selling hope as the new dough.
Wow. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned 8% growth. When you fall into a pit, you're expected to climb back out. So every country is expected in the years immediately following the pandemic to have experienced some growth. In Britain, they're talking about 20% growth, but they fell by 30. So, politicians like to sound optimistic and to use that for, and I don't, you can't for, and I don't, you can't for. But until we see the nitty gritty, I think the tax system is a very good place to start, because it's at the crux of so much that's wrong with our economy, so much wrong with our society. Until you start seeing some of that, something being built on the bare bones of policy talk, then we won't know. I wish the government the best. I know that there are people in there with very good intentions, and I know there are people in there who understand what the problems are, what some of the problems are. But until we're able to resolve basic structural deficiencies that we had even before the pandemic, before the hurricane, before the, since the outset, we've had structural deficiencies, yes, in education, in the kind of lopsided economic growth that we've had in the country, and it is good, however, to see the starting point be something as fundamental as the tax system. And tackle this, maybe politicians will begin to get a little more confidence in their ability to think out of the box and move ahead and leave behind some of the backward-looking policies of the past.
Well, I want to pick up on that because, see, Alan, you, in essence, what you're suggesting is that we would be making a huge mistake if we tried to go back to business as usual. And I know we are already seeing where great emphasis is being placed on the uptick that we now are experiencing in tourism numbers. Everybody got all excited when we heard that the restrictions are being dialed back with regard to the pandemic. We're now talking about being able to go back to regattas and all this kind of stuff, which we know major role in the economies of those family islands where those regattas are held. People rely on that revenue from those regattas, and I'm sure it was great news. But are we relying too heavily on the model that we only operated on and only knew getting us to this point? Do you think that we need to be doing more to start thinking outside the box and start, not to say throw away the baby, but to start thinking of other things that we could possibly do better and improve on, having the experience that we have had with the double whammy of Dorian and COVID-19? What are your thoughts?
Michelle, let me just say this, right? My brother opens a food store and I go and buy stuff from him. Have I contributed to the growth of the economy, or I shifted some of my income to him? That's a shared program. And so when we go to regattas and the other different things, there's no new money coming in. We have to begin to get into the export business of these so-called economic models we have, so we can have money coming in. It's amazing that we celebrate the very thing that has devastated the Bahamian hospitality industry. Is we are celebrating that larger hotels are now coming to the Bahamas, all-inclusive hotels. And so, unless we are in this illusion and delusion that building more inclusive hotels allows growth for people outside of that inclusivity, then we must be going mad. The cruise ship industry, our growth in tourism numbers have grown exponentially due to these inclusive hotels. We must begin to recognize that the cruise ship themselves has become the destination. And so for the very fact that cruise businesses are going out of businesses, even, yes, there's going to be some smaller niche type thing that begin to exploit the Bahamas geolocation for the very fact that we have the opportunity to shift our hospitality model. So they'll say, because you guys are not building a destination for the people to come to, we will build a destination on the sea and let them experience you for a couple of hours. We should be looking at reforming our hospitality and tourism product. Considering this, tourism is what people do. Hospitality is what people experience. And so we cannot go back to this, let's get more cruise ships and things to come into the harbor. We must look at the fact that COVID has changed the paradigm in hospitality. That's the key word, hospitality. And so we must begin to look at how do we get these models of hospitality industry or tourism to be integrated into our economic model so that Bahamians gets to own it. We have people talking about building, even on Grand Bahama, large hotels. We need bigger hotels, 1,000 rooms, 2,000 rooms. When you say, okay, in Grand Bahama, we need 20,000 bed rooms here. So why do we want 10, 2,000 room hotels when we can have 10,000 two unit bed and breakfasts that's owned by Bahamians? It accomplishes the same goal because people do not go on vacation to experience the rooms. They go on places to experience the country, the culture, those various different things. So those culture is not on those cruise ships. And so unless we move to redefine our tourism product, let's begin to reimagine the Bahamas. Let's begin to reimagine Grand Bahama and Abaco and these different things. And you know, the PLP spoke about some things. They spoke about the orange economy, blue economy, green, knowledge, conceptual, digital, everything else. Well, I would love to see the legislative agenda that sets in motion the development of the ecosystems for these things to come into fruition, that gives Bahamian equitable access that foreigners now have from the outside. And I think that we need to have a real conversation on the direction our country needs to go coming into this new digital dispensation that the world has now embraced. But we will not be going back in time. Let's build the future.
And one thing is, you know, if we do more of the same, anything new that we bring in, and Mr. Johnson's right, talking about the domestic economy and money flowing around inside it is great, but until we have new sources of foreign exchange coming into the country, then nothing will change dramatically. But until we put Bahamians in a position to be not disadvantaged, then we're going to have more of the same. There'll be more foreigners coming in. There'll be more foreigners coming in. I hear people talking about it's great. There's Bitcoin, digital currencies and all the rest wanting to come in. That's great, but the Bahamian business person is at a severe disadvantage in a number of ways that I do not see being addressed by any government. The banking system here is a disgrace. What I compete with as a business person, compared to what somebody coming from another country with securing their financing there to operate in the Bahamas and compete against me, is an absolute disgrace. And the government doesn't do anything about it. The central bank doesn't do anything about it. 3%. You go to use a Bahamian credit card as a business, you're being charged 3%. You know, that would be considered jailable in the United States. You know, you go to wire money, and they're taking, and then on top of that, they come with all these obscure rules about you can and you can't, and then treat you like you're a criminal because you're trying to conduct business. So that's an example.
Yep.
But if our economy is going to continue to bring in people and bring in foreigners, great. But if it's going to do so in a way that all future growth is going to be in the disproportionate way, in the disproportionate and anti-Bahamian character that's taken place in the past, then we'll have a whole new set of industries where Bahamians are at the very bottom of the table. That's what I think is important. You know, this is an opportunity for a reset, in other words, like Mr. Johnson says. But let's take into account that things we did wrong before, things that we now can change. You know, we have many opportunities in this country that, like Mr. Johnson says, the cruise ships come here. Well, they also ask for concessions, huge concessions. They don't even, there was a time.
Not just ask for, but get them.
They get them. Nobody else is selling cruise ships.
They don't just ask for them. They get them, yeah, for sure.
Concessions. There was a time cruise ships had to close down their entertainment, as we all know, when they got into the port of Nassau, right? Yes. Nowadays,
what happened to that?
What happened to that? The people of Spanish Wells told the cruise ships to go to you know where when they asked to come to Spanish Wells last year. They had no interest because they knew that that it did nothing for the local economy. The way their economy is structured, which is owned by the locals.
Yeah.
You know, so we give mass concessions to anybody who says they're going to come here and give a job, and we give minimal support to Bahamians who are going to create a job even for themselves. And unless we change that mindset and put it in practice, then more of the same, I'm afraid.
I liken it to the Bahamas being a very beautiful woman who does not know her value.
Right.
And therefore, any Tom, Dick, or Harry throw any kind of line, we quick to bite.
They have to come through us. They have to come through us to get to the competition. This is the crazy thing. Yeah.
Right.
We the gateway.
Oh, we won't go to the Bahamas. We'll go to Turks and Caicos and Jamaica. Oh, well, enjoy spending how much enjoy spending however many hundreds of thousands of dollars to go around the Bahamas to get to the Turks and Caicos and Jamaica.
Exactly.
We don't speak for ourselves. Beautiful woman who just any old fool joker could talk.
Does not know her value. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry come And yeah, we will in a boy, I tell you. Go ahead, Alan. You started to say something.
No, I'm saying is that she's decided it's like she believes that crackheads are the best. So I'm I'm simply saying is that we have to get away from allowing our leaders to intellectual. I don't like to use the word, but just one time, what we have is a lot of linguistic contortionism and intellectual masturbation that comes from our leadership. And we must begin to see through this. And what we have to, is that we have people, and they have to understand, yes, they have a value of an input, but when so many of us begin to just simply with a loud noise repeat what we are told, as opposed to an educated and research position, you know, it's like if you've heard somebody said it, and said it and said it and said it, and you have not verified and authenticated, then don't repeat it. And so if we allow, I believe that there's sufficient amongst us to reshape and attack this new global reality that we are in, that will transform, or we say terraform, the Bahamas archipelago and the economics of the Bahamian Republic. Believe it or not, 250,000 individuals in our workforce is a very small amount of people that we have to incorporate in these multitude of economic models that's coming to life. If you just take, for instance, the 7 economic models the government speak of, or and Michelle, the economic model that Eden Mary Gator has spoke of, called the aquamarine economy, that took a blended environment of the green, the blue, the orange, the digital, the knowledge, and the conceptual, to a blended environment that brought about the aquamarine economy. If you look at the fact that 50% of our people are unemployed or underemployed, if you look at each of these economic models, and these are almost 75 to 90% imports. I mean exports, export of intellectual capital and use and import of capital. If you were to just look at the subcategory, for instance, just in the fact that hospitality crosses the blue, the green, the orange, the digital, everything. If you look at that and put 1,000 in each of those categories, whether it be sports tourism, religious tourism, medical tourism, educational tourism, just leisure thing, wellness, and all these different things, and the multiplier effect of that, we literally will have people with 2 and 3 jobs that we will have to begin to import people into the Bahamas. We could have a conversation on immigration, but if you just look at the size of Singapore, and we use an example for being infrastructurally prepared for this new global environment, Singapore is only 30 square miles larger than Freeport, and New Providence could fit into Freeport a few times, and in Grand Bahama multiple times. And so when you look at the potential for our exponential growth, sitting off one of the largest economy in the world, and just from the hospitality aspect of it alone, we could grow our economy and recover in the shortest period of time. The only thing it requires, though, and those same individuals that has the influence on politics with the money class, it puts them at a disadvantage, because what happens now is that you may have thousands of new millionaires who collectively don't share the vision or the position that they do, and they too now will be able to buy their politicians who represents their interests. And so that's where you have this conflict of letting Bahamians be empowered or letting the country die so they can maintain their status quo.
All right, gentlemen, we have to take a quick commercial break. And then on the other side of the break, I'm going to throw a couple of questions that have been being asked by our Facebook audience, and would like to invite those of you who are listening by way of radio, or if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, to join in on the conversation. The telephone numbers to call: 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0271, or 326-0272, 326-0272, and our WhatsApp line is 824-9952, 824-9952. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
You know the man.
And welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm in your company. And I am joined today by C. Alan Johnson and Andrew Allen. And we are talking about the mid-year budget debate, communication by Prime Minister Philip Davis, presented to the House of Assembly yesterday. I have a question here from Siobhan on Facebook. And Siobhan says, my question for your guests is, why have successive governments stalled at fully implementing FOIA-ATI?
I think that question probably speaks for itself, right?
If you say what it is, Freedom of Information Act or access, you know what it means? It means that you'll know everything they do and how they do it. Because, but let me say this, right? For those of people who have said freedom of information laws have been passed, there's no freedom of information in the Bahamas without digitization. None. Because let me ask you, if I ask for some information now from 20 years ago, I can't get information from 2 years ago. And you can imagine them going to find the archives and digging it up. In fact, if we actually digitize it right now, you'll find out that probably all of the records on Grand Bahama being destroyed and no copies exist. On all the records in Abaco and Grand Bahama being destroyed, no record exists. You're not even for how much students was in the classrooms in Abaco. And so this whole concept of, I'm simply saying this, we are such an ideal position for, how they say it's a global reset? This is a global opportunity for the Bahamas to basically do the things that we've been saying we want done. Freedom of information, integrity bills. But when you begin to look at these things, right? And I always tell people all the time, when you have laws, when you have to pass laws to make your laws to make your nation accountable, to provide freedom of information, to have integrity, to make them anti-corruption laws, you have a leadership problem because you shouldn't have to pass laws and fight for these things. Leadership should be in aggressive mode of giving them to you. So but I'm simply saying this, we have not because we demand not. And this is the time for Bahamians to individually make demands of their MPs. Stop screaming at the ban. Go and see your individual MP and tell them, you want freedom of information and an actual digitization plan. Now, digitization is making things digital. The freedom of information is a form of digitalization, which is the use of digital information. So, yes, we need freedom of information. And because they do not want to go digital, because digital creates permanent records of all that we do, when we do it. And so even if you exempt it, especially now we're talking about the blockchain, if you exempt information, say for a certain amount of years, when you go back, it'll be exactly the way it was.
Okay. I want to go ahead and read another excerpt from the presentation yesterday. But before I do, let me just put a comment on the screen from one of our Facebook viewers. Rose says, good afternoon, Michelle, and welcome to your brilliant guest. Ain't nothing can change. Same movie, just different cast. Mark my words. Now, I wanted to read that first before I go into quoting what the Prime Minister said yesterday in his contribution to the mid-budget debate. And I'm quoting here. Accountability and transparency are two key tenets of good governance. The Bahamians know what is being done in their name, and the government of the Bahamas should be accountable to them. In turn, investors and lenders should be confident that the information upon which they base their decisions are accurate and reliable. At any given time, the accounting figures reflects the choices and priorities of an administration. Basic principles of integrity require those who set the priorities and make the choices at the least ought to report those figures accurately. It is extremely regrettable, therefore, Madam Speaker, that the previous administration fell well short in its legal and moral duties to be as transparent as practically possible in order that it might be held accountable for its decisions and actions. Now, that sounds very much like an administration that plans to prove Rose wrong. Are you convinced that this is a new day, no pun intended, in the Bahamas, or is this just more rhetoric that you say the nice things, you get a nice clip on the news, and then you go business as usual. If you believe that this is more than just rhetoric, what is convincing you that that is the case?
I don't have anything. Go ahead, Alan.
I don't see, I think it's easy to get, and it's unfortunate when the population becomes apathetic and the population believes that there's not going to be change in any event. I think certain things happen to drive that, and there's things that governments can do to nudge people out of that. Although there's always going to be cynicism about politics and about politicians by its nature. The government that we just came out of was in many ways the worst. As I said earlier, I don't think they necessarily did as much damage as a previous other, but they were. The level of the lack of transparency, in my experience, as an attorney trying to find information, as a business person, as a Bahamian citizen, the level of transparency fell to a nadir in my opinion. If the government does its best to try to move ahead with a positive agenda that at least distinguishes itself, then it could become part of a trend. I hope that's the best that we can hope for. I don't see politicians changing overnight to become people whose primary interest is necessarily maybe shouldn't be so harsh, but I don't see politicians just failing to be politicians. There's always going to be some blame throwing and underperformance. But I give this government high marks so far in many regards, and I hope and believe that their sense of change is going to be given some real impetus.
For me, I like the talk, right? Since this is the dating game, and she's convincing me that she has all these
not the dating game.
All these qualities. What I would love to see though is the legislative agenda that put in place these things. As a person, and let me say what he said. I have been advocate for a data economy before data was data. Okay, and what I'm simply saying is, I agree with you, Alan. I've never saw access to data reach the low level that it did as the previous administration. I'm a data aggregator, and I almost had to check to see if I still had my ID. They were so busy hiding data, and so what happens was that I'm hoping now that they would actually move. The government would show in legislative agenda and in actual laws that involves us, the people that is competent in the arena. Because as you see right now, and I see people say, this is the most gracious law there is that the same people who's now writing your law that wrote it for them? So what I'm simply saying is if we come out of that and use the collective intelligence of all of us, I do see the possibility for change. But we cannot have laws that is weak and incompetent at best, that tries to address the reality of today simply by saying things. And this goes back to 2004 when we had the data protection laws passed. We are saying things are digital, but we are not doing anything to actually digitize that information or digitize that access. And I hear the whole thing where we are celebrating the gateways and everything else. It's great that we are now celebrating 19th century technology or even 20th century technology. But really, we are a small demographics, a small subset in the data pool. Probably 80% of all the companies in the world, Fortune 1000 companies, is data dependent. And so if people are to go into businesses, if people are to go into the real world environment, data, whatever you want to call it, is absolute necessary for the growth and the development of the Bahamas. Let's use agriculture to be talking about. Why don't you call customs or anyone else and ask for data and see if they can provide you of the real data as to what has come in, how it moves through the Bahamas, or all these various different things. They can't. They just tell you based on the collection of receipts. We haven't digitized even those receipts or bring them into a whole data pool to be able to even crunch those for those information. And so it's good that we talk about it, but it's the infrastructure that you have to show me that you fiscally commit to billing as well as legally. I don't like policy. Policy changes every time the ministers speak. I am a strong proponent of legislation. Policies and programs, I've heard policies change in this government already for the last 6 months, because those are utterances that the minister says that, you know what they say? Feel good statements. Put it in put policy in legislation, and I'm all with you, because then we can now agitate for you to follow the law, as opposed to say what I said yesterday is not what I meant today.
Okay. All right. I want to read another excerpt from his presentation, and we have to spend a couple of minutes talking about this. The Prime Minister said that in August of last year, the former administration released its pre-election report as required under the Fiscal Responsibility Act. In part, this act mandates the government to disclose its accounts of arrears, unpaid bills, and other unbudgeted financial obligations. Sadly, from last August fell woefully short of the standard required by law. In its pre-election report, the former administration reported total arrears of $64.3 million and $108.8 million in unpaid invoices, a total of $173.1 million. Upon coming to office in September, my administration engaged the accounting firm Deloitte to review the contents of the previous administration's to ensure that we have true accounting of unpaid invoices and arrears that my government inherited as of the 30th of September 2021. Their findings are simply astounding. The previous administration failed to disclose significant liabilities and obligations of the government, totaling some $821.5 million, almost $1 billion. Should I go on? Should I break it down? That 821 million, or does it not matter at this point?
No, that's a conversation. That's
yeah.
You know, when we talk about go ahead.
Go ahead.
When we
no, I was going to say that the opposition is already coming out and saying that what he presented was not exactly the full. I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but they're saying that he was being a bit disingenuous in his presentation or misleading in his presentation. What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
Well,
go ahead, Alan.
But if it follows the same patterns that we just spoke about of opaque government, then it doesn't surprise me. If the patterns that we saw as citizens not being able to get answers to, I don't recall how many different inquiries were promised in that 4-year term, you know, whether it was the BPL or the NIB or the OBAN, that disappeared. So if there's any consistency, then it doesn't surprise me, and I would be extremely surprised that a government that of every small little glimpse you got of their practice was opaque, dodging, and in some instances untruthful. I'd be extremely surprised that suddenly, when it came to big matters of stating fiscal matters with honesty and transparency, they followed a different model. Let's just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
See, Michelle,
okay. See, Alan?
When you talk about transparency and accountability, right, and anti-corruption, all these allegations that's been made, you know, if we was to start a project, we could have this baby in 9 months, you know, a completely digital thing where we know every liability we have should be laid bare on the table, put on the blockchain. Nobody can modify it, nobody can change it. And we can go to the blockchain. Again, we should be actually aware of every dime spent for us on our behalf in real time, and so we can make an evaluation as to what are we getting for value. We can also begin to, if the Prime Minister is serious, I would love to see in this upcoming budget full funding of the Auditor General Office, completely giving them the capacity to do audit in real time. So he could bring on maybe a few dozen more staff, and we can audit every aspect of our budget in real time. If you have accountability also for value, rather than 1, 2, 3 years later. So we will just have this fight about what could, should have been, and what it might have done. And so, but when you say we are in the age of technology and enlightenment, that we could actually now begin the whole process, beginning with the next budget debates, that here is exactly where we are on June 30th. So when we wake up on July 1st with a new budget, we know every dime that is owed. And in real time, we'll know every dime that is spent. And we can do a comparative analysis of everything else. That would impress me. I mean, Mr. Davis, I can tell you the whole new 70% generation would be kicking in doors to make sure that you are elected, if they could actually be involved, re-elected, if they could actually be involved in their governance. And so in the light of the information and the access available, they can prove what they're saying about transparency, accountability, freedom of information by actually doing it right now. And I'm not talking about hiring your friends, lovers, family, whoever else, who now must go read the manual on how to break this down. Believe it or not, we have billion and trillion dollar companies that has been doing these platforms for years. Like how we say we go for education, we go find some people who don't have it in their country, who say they can do it in ours, a more advanced country. Let's go to the giant companies and actually go and look for Google and programmers. I mean, these people are running and collecting data and managing data for 4, 5, 6 billion people on a daily basis in real time. Clearly, they could manage a small company called the Bahamas and put it on the blockchain in the public domain. And so if they're serious, let's have a conversation on what's going to cost to convert us into the future. And then let's see how it goes in real time, so we'll know what you spend, how you spend it, and who you spend it with. That'll impress me tremendously. And he has the opportunity to do it after this midterm. Remember, this is the midterm budget debate for what's already happened up to December 31st. What we would love to see, these things that he's mentioning in the midterm, we would love to see them implemented in the budget debate that will occur in about 5 to 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
Now, you wanted to say something, Andrew?
I'm endorsing what Mr. Johnson to say, especially the digitalization. We've been hearing about this for more than 20 years. I mean, well more than 20 years. They're talking about this since the Y2K days, if you recall. Yeah. Everything would be available at your fingertips, and there's absolutely nothing available at your fingertips. You know, something as simple as you go to incorporate a company, and they had a machine, and you try to search a company name, and it kept coming back, no, not available, not available. And it turned out because there was no human behind it, the machine just saw the words limited and rejected the company. So it wasn't just, you know, we're talking about digitizing, but we're not putting in place smart systems. You know, I suppose is the problem. Very little information in the Bahamas is actually available digitally. Very little.
Right. See, because we believe that scanning documents is digital. What he just talked about, see, what he was looking for is a relational database. They believe putting everything on Excel is the world's greatest database. Okay. Right. These people would believe that you build Facebook.
And even I know better than that. Okay. So I want to cover one more thing before we get out of here, and we have to talk about this. And the Prime Minister spent some time talking about ongoing investigations. And what he said was that we will not follow the path of the previous administration and seek to inflict, quote, victor's justice, end quote. We will not unsubstantiated accusations or unfairly tarnish the reputations of anyone just because they support our political opponents. This practice is abhorrent and has inflicted much pain on members of the Bahamian public. With the arrival in of our administration, it is a practice which I hope we will never see again. Public life in the Bahamas. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly, but he didn't end there. No matter what early suspicions have arisen or what the evidence has partially revealed, natural justice requires that no one is prejudged and everyone is granted their full constitutional right to due process. Whatever action we take must be supported by sound evidence which has been independently collected and verified. Now, this is where it gets interesting. That said, Madam Speaker, it is becoming increasingly clear that some in the previous administration viewed governance as an extractive industry. They used public office to enrich themselves, their families, and their friends. They did not care that the country was devastated by a Category 5 hurricane or was burdened by a pandemic that hadn't been experienced in a century. They wanted theirs, and they wanted it now. And the political leadership directly contributed to this by taking steps to ensure that normal safeguards were not applied. Now, one of the things that disturbed me when we were hearing about all of these contracts that had been given out, and in some cases, signatures approving these contracts, 10 different companies being formed so that one person could get all these contracts. One of the things that Michael Pentard said was that, in essence, okay, so this is something that happens all the time, and let me see you guys fix it. And I was kind of disappointed, because it's not enough, in my opinion, for you to say, well, yeah, everybody does it, so what's the point? And in essence, that's what he was saying. Are we at the point now where somebody need to go to jail? Because if we keep sweeping this problem under the rug, they will never stop. And I'm not pointing this finger at any one particular party, because you only need to go back in history and you will see where malfeasance has taken place under all colors that have this country. Let's be real. There's no political party, no political organization in this country that has sat in administration that has not had some stuff go down under its leadership that was questionable. When will it stop if they are not required to face the consequences for their actions? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's consequences and there's consequences. I think what you saw the last time around was full politicization of this whole issue of maladministration and corruption. And why I say that, the most embarrassing of all the episodes that took place under Mr. Minister's administration was, of course, the show trials, where you brought in a senior, respected Jamaican statesman, Katie Knight, who had been a minister in the Jamaican government for decades, and a statesman and a very top-notch lawyer, come in and simply, my colleagues who worked with him expressed to me that this man's sense of the Bahamas was diminished by the actions he saw being taken by members of the political directorate, who were seeming to direct the prosecution of their opponents, members of the police force, and members of the DPP's office, who were allowing things to take place seemingly out of a sense that they should all be part of pursuing justice against their political opponents, right? Now, you don't want that. Whatever happens, you don't want a government coming in and doing what Minister did last time. First day of office, Dion Smith was a PLP MB. The first day of office of Mr. Minnis, they locked this man up in handcuffs based upon what somebody had been reporting and saying that they thought took place, over what turned out to be him removing his own equipment, television equipment, out of BAIC, right? They paraded MPs, one of whom was physically injured in this disgraceful, shackles before the television cameras, before trial. I mean, that's a disgraceful practice anyway, and I hope it's over, because whether you're acquitted or not, being seen to be led in shackles in front of that what they call it, that shuffle, whatever they call it, it's disgraceful, and it is against the rules of natural justice. Nobody should have that indelibly marked in the record against them when they've not been convicted of anything. So that was, I agree with you, Michelle, it can't happen again. But certain things are better punished politically. When I say politically, I don't mean by politicians going after them. I think Bahamians need to make up their mind that they're not going to tolerate, and they're not going to vote for, and they're not going to accept people governing them who behave in that way. So some of it has to come back.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, right? But while we could take that approach, they still living up in big mansion what they build off of our money. And I'm not calling anybody names, so don't try. Don't come for me. If I throw rock in the crowd, it's the one who get hit.
If somebody steals in the public purse, yes, that person should be yes, of course, the police. And it shouldn't matter if it's an MP or a man on the street or whoever, right? It shouldn't matter. But what I'm saying is the actions of the last government that they seem to undertake as part of a plan of theirs, right?
Yeah.
Those things, I wouldn't necessarily. I would let the Bahamian people judge just what kind of people they were that we somehow let govern this country for 4 years.
Michelle, let me just take you back.
No, I can't because we're running out of time. I just need you to give me a 30-second closing, C. Allen.
No,
30-second closing. 45.
In that closing, I'll tell you, it goes back to exactly what Mr. Greg Moore said when he was in House of Assembly. An anti-corruption bill, an income tax that gives accountability, and if they cannot account for the unfound wealth, we'll take all of it. And this is an argument that also is online that Mr. Gregory Morse made. And it simply said the solutions we have facing us are very simple. We just have to decide we want to do them.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Andrew, your last comments, real quick.
I endorse my colleague says absolutely. We have to show a seriousness. We have to show a seriousness about who they want governing them, and those who we elect need to actually pass these laws. We need legislation that's going to, of course, take every penny that's found that somebody can't account for having after serving in a position of public trust where they had access to public resources.
Gentlemen, I gotta cut you, Andrew, because we're running out of guys so much for being here today. I really, really do appreciate you being a part of this conversation. All right. And I'm sure I'll have you back. All right. So before we get out of here, you know what happens next week. Wednesday, our very own Sienna Evans is going for the Miss World crown. And guess what, y'all? She gonna win. So if you are a business owner or a person who has a service and you want to advertise, we are trying to get some sponsors to cover our costs to go to Puerto Rico to witness this historic moment for the Bahamas.
It's the weekend, and we be getting down tonight. Come on, girls, and my sisters, get right. Get your high heels on and your little black dress, 'cause you're gonna impress tonight. We only drink champagne, that's right. No beer around here tonight, 'cause it's a high-class joint, and we're gonna reach point in here tonight. Be coming through, hanging with my crew. What you wanna do? Sexy ladies, give it to me. We ain't here for you, hanging with my crew. What you gonna do? Sexy ladies, work it, baby. All my girls in the club, rap a fella, work it out. Do your thing, shake it up, pop it till you can't stop. Move right, groove tight, I'm feeling it tonight. Getting hot, doing shots, we gon' set this party up.
What's the call? 326-0271, 326-0271, or 326-0272 if you want to be a part of that broadcast. We're going to be coming to you live from Puerto Rico, when we're going to hear, and the new Miss World is Bahamas. Let's get it done, y'all. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Tomorrow is TGIF, an open line show. Get your comments ready. We'll see you then. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Global 99.5 FM reminds our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host and guests and not necessarily the opinions of the owners of Global Communications Network and the operators of this radio station.
This is 99.5 Global